And a bit of bad news as well. My clicker is finally broken. Yeah, I know, right? That's not fun. All right, so let's go over some key vocabulary dealing with Russia first, so that you understand the conflict that's going on. First, we have what is called the Tsar. The Tsar. They're basically just an absolute monarch in Russia. They just call it something a little bit different. Now, when you see this term, you may also see it as Tsar spelled with a T. It's just a different spelling, different translation. Okay, same word, means the same thing, just different spelling. Okay, so Tsar basically means the king of Russia. Now, where do you think this word came from? In fact, say the first letter and then sound out the rest of the word. Caesar, right? Who was Caesar? Not the dressing. Who was Caesar? What's that? No, he's not king of the apes. He was crowned emperor of what great civilization? Not Greece, but Rome. So Caesar, what? No, that's all right. Right? So that's where they're going to get it from, is the Roman emperor Caesar. Yes, he's also the king of the apes and planet of the apes. Again, with that same connotation that he is the ultimate. All right, next, a word that we don't know, proletariat. Proletariat, and this word means it's basically the lowest class in Russian society. Okay, mostly to industrial workers. Now, a couple of things. What does this word industrial mean? Industry. Okay, that's easy. What does industry mean? Factories. So they're working in the factories. Not the best job, not the best paying job. Now, if we go back to something that we've already learned, the French Revolution, what would the proletariat be like there? What would we have called them in French society during the French Revolution? What's that? No. They had a system set up into 3 different groups. Remember that? What was that system called? The estate system. So the proletariat would have been which estate? The lowest, which was the... what number? The 3rd. Right. So the proletariat would have been like the 3rd estate in France, right? So many of you who acted that out didn't like being part of the 3rd estate. But that's because you are the lowest in society, and this is where it's going to come from. Bourgeoisie, this is a word that we know from the French Revolution as well, meaning middle class. Just a big word for middle class. And then we have another new term, but this was also a term from your vocabulary that you should have known. Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks. Essentially, every time you see that, all you need to know is that it means communists. Okay? The Communist Party is going to take over Russia in eventually in 1918. Okay, led by this group called the Bolsheviks. Questions? A couple more vocabulary terms, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. All right, a few more. So the first one up there is not a term, but a name. The name Romanov was the royal family, so the king, right, the king and his family that had ruled for about 300 years. Long time, right? Obviously not one person ruled for 300 years, but the family did. Then another term that was part of your vocabulary that some of you didn't do mostly, and that is totalitarianism. Long word, easy concept. Let's look at the word. And what is the root word of totalitarianism? Total. So it means total control. Total control. So the absolute power, again, going back to that, it's just a big word for absolute power. Meaning they have all of the power. So this rule here is supposed to mean that one person, or what we'll see in Russia as one party. One party rule. Now I'm not talking about like a party like a dance rave or anything like that. What I'm talking about is one political party or one political faction. And what party is going to take over eventually in Russia? What did I just say? Who's going to take over? What party is going to take over in Russia? The Communists, yeah. Right? The Bolshevik Party or the Communist Party is going to take over. All right, good. Next is a term that you may be familiar with. You may have said before. Soviet. When have you said the word Soviet? The Soviet Union. That's going to be in Russia. The reason is because the term Soviet means elected people. Okay? Formed during the Russian Revolution. So these are the people who are not forcing themselves into government. They're being elected into government. All right? So those are good people. All right. The next is a funny term. Gulag. No, that doesn't say goulash. That's what Mom makes at home. A gulag is essentially a work camp. In a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about the Holocaust. Many of you are familiar with that. Many of you are very interested in that. The Gulag in Russia during the early 20th century is basically the same as a Nazi work camp in Poland during the Holocaust. People who were enemies of the state, meaning they were enemies of the government, they spoke out against the government, were sent into prison or work camps. Imagine that every time you said something about a teacher or about the principal or about the school on Twitter, on Facebook, on text message, on Kik, on anything, on Instagram, anything at all, you were put into a work camp. How many would be in work camps? Yeah, most of you, if not, none of you will admit it. But it's out there for the public to see, and this public would have picked it up, and you would have been put right into prison. Okay? That's just the life that they lived at the time. It's kind of like that, yeah. It's kind of like a sweatshop. Many companies do that, yes. It's getting cold in here. CJ, you shut that window behind you. Alright, so before the revolution, we're going to talk, there's a few stages of the revolution. Alright, so before the revolution starts, Russia is the only true autocracy that's left in Europe. Now, what do we think this word means up here? Look at the root word. What do we think that word means? What is the root word of that? Well, what is it? It's auto. Well, that would be automobile. Mobile means a car. Auto means something else. What does auto or automatic mean? No, it doesn't have to be an engine. What does the word automatic mean?
Does it on its own.
It does it on its own, right? So it just keeps going with no stopping. Okay? So what this means when you put it into a government sense is that the government just goes on without changing. Okay? So autocracy means that one person, the king, continues to rule with no competition. Okay? Russia is the only true autocracy left, meaning they are the only ones with kings left by the 1900s, or truly anyway. Okay? Because Germany and Austria-Hungary do as well. However, it's a little bit different than what's going on in Russia. Because they had no representative political institutions. That means people were not going to the polls to vote. People had no voice in the government at all. Nicholas II, this fine young gentleman here, becomes the Tsar, like I told you. What does this word mean here? The leader, the king, right? Nicholas II becomes the king in 1884. He believes he's an absolute ruler. Again, what does that mean? To have absolute power? One king. You have all of the power. So in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, people in Russia, especially from those low classes, are starting to get angry with how the government is ruled. There's a very low standard of living. I've mentioned this before, but Russia does not go through the Industrial Revolution like other countries in Europe. That means there's not a lot of money going into the country. The poor are still very, very poor, and the rich continue to get richer on the poor. When that happens, people are not happy. So a guy by the name of Karl Marx writes this book. Who can remember what this guy wrote? Karl Marx. He wrote something extremely important to world history. What did Karl Marx write? He had a friend do it with him. Omar, do me a favor. Google search Karl Marx. He didn't write a poem. He wrote a longer book. It wasn't a book of war, though it did have revolution in it. It did have rules, yes?
Karl Marx.
Yep, Karl Marx.
His Facebook?
No, not his Facebook.
Paul Cato.
Are you spelling it correctly?
Yeah. I'm spelling it for everyone.
Who else can look it up? Thousands of you have phones.
Karl Marx.
There we go. Wikipedia, that's fine. Should pop right up. What did he write? The Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto. Okay, so communist, we'll leave that to the side for now. But he writes the Communist Manifesto. First, we have to figure out what this word manifesto means. What the heck does that mean? Mana what? Exactly. Manifesto. Manifesto. Alright, looks like we're going to do another Google search. Oh no, we have to use our phones. Manifesto. No. I have to choose somebody now. Caitlin, you got it right at your fingertips. No, it doesn't mean minority. Okay, yes. So it means, read it again. Just the first part. Alright, a declaration of policy and aims. DJ said it was what? Kind of like a rule book. That's exactly what it is. And in there it rules what communism is. So Karl Marx writes this book about what it means to be communist. Now, who can explain what communism is. I will give you a hint. We acted out communism when we played rock, paper, scissors. Remember that? Who remembers playing rock, paper, scissors?
DJ. He's a big penny.
Plays patty cake. Alright, when we played rock, paper, scissors, we acted out communism. So who can remember how we acted it out? How did it work? Very good, Aruma. Everybody had the same amount of money. And what happened if you lost that money?
You had to.
Who had to give it to who? You got it from me, right? So in communism, everything that is created in a country is given to the government, and then the government gives it back. So if we think of it in terms of money, all the money that you earn goes right back to the government, and then the government distributes it equally. So let's take a high-paying job. Let's see here. Kenny, give me a job that gets a lot of money. A lawyer. Okay, good. So a lawyer makes a lot of money. And Edgar, give me a job that does not make a lot of money at all. A McDonald's worker, okay? So a minimum wage McDonald's worker. In communism, a lawyer makes a whole lot of money, and a McDonald's worker makes not a lot of money, but they eventually make the same amount of money. Is that fair? No, but the idea behind Marx and the idea behind communism is that everybody should be equal, not greedy. On paper, communism looks perfect. In reality, it can never be perfect because people are greedy inherently. And people think that they should be paid or compensated for what they do. And to a big extent, that's right. What if I were to give you a test? Or no, how about this? The vocabulary quiz today. How many of you think you got 100 on that quiz? All right, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you. Okay. How many of you think you got about a 20%? Didn't study at all. Didn't do the vocabulary. All right. What if I said everybody in here gets a 60?
Good.
No.
Well, some of you say that's good, right? Who thinks that would be good? Everybody gets a 60. All right. Who thinks that would be bad? All right. So it's the people who work hard that wouldn't want it to happen. But it's the people who didn't work who want it to happen. Okay? So I know 60 is still failing, but I can only distribute so many points. Right? So that's the idea behind communism. Alright? So those ideas are going around in Russia. Why do you think that is? Because the people who are poor is a lot of people. And they say, hey, we should be sharing everything that we do. We're busting our ass. We're doing all the work. So why aren't we getting rewarded for it? All right. So those ideas, those beautiful, peaceful, and equal ideas are going through Russia. Okay. The leader of this idea is a man by the name of Vladimir Lenin. We're going to see a picture of him later, and I will also have you do a Google search on him in a little bit. Something else that's going on, Russia is fighting Japan over some land in China and Korea and things like that. Like I said. All right. So, here's what happened. One of the very beginnings of, as we look back at it now, the Russian Revolution. The first sort of big conflict is called Bloody Sunday, or the Revolution of 1905. And on Bloody Sunday, there's a group of workers who are pretty upset with their conditions, with the way that they're not making money, with the unfairness of Russia's government. They get joined up by some poor peasants in the countryside. And 200,000 of them collectivized. Now that's like filling FedEx Field like 3 times with people. That's how many people they have. It's a peaceful protest until the guards of where they were shot them. And the reason it's called Bloody Sunday is because the blood seeped into the snow. Remember, Russia is very cold, and when they protested, it was in the snow. And the blood, imagine looking out right now and seeing blood in the snow, right? You'd be able to see that very vividly. That would stick out in your mind. So the Tsar, again, the leader, his guards are the ones doing all the shooting. It was supposed to be a peaceful protest. But remember back to that whole idea of totalitarianism, there's only one party rule. And if you disagree with it, you're going to get shot or sent to the gulag. So this shooting sparks countrywide discontent. More strikes are happening. The Tsar has to do something. He has to do something. So what he says is, all right, I'm going to limit my power, and I'm going to establish something. I'm going to establish this thing called a Duma. Essentially what that is where people can vote on the people they think should be in the government. Okay? So the Tsar really is at least showing that he's trying to help the situation out. But why do you think he's doing that? Do you think he really believes that people should vote? No. So why do you think he's doing it? To make it seem like he's giving away power so that he doesn't get killed. Right? Eventually, even after the Duma is made and the people elect others to office, the Tsar completely ignores them. He doesn't pay them any attention at all. And it is dissolved in about 10 weeks. Let's move on. All right. So the third part is they're involved in Russia's involvement in World War I. Remember, they're on the side of France and Britain. They're fighting Germany. They don't like Germany. They don't like Austria-Hungary. And the Tsar brings them into what's called at the time the Great War. We know it as World War I. What happens is the war shows how bad of a government that Russia has. Because there's no leadership. Okay. At the time, the average peasant, meaning those of the low class, had very, very little. Didn't have much of anything at all. Very, very poor. Before we go on, take a look at that picture. Who are those people in there?
Children.
Well, one is a child, but they're all soldiers. So what does that show? Who was fighting for Russia? Anyone, right? It was so bad that they even had children younger than you fighting. And yes, you are all still children. Their troops are poorly supplied. And the result, gentlemen, the result is not only chaos and terrible fighting, but disintegration of the Russian army. The Russians start fighting themselves and fighting their leaders rather than fighting the enemy. Imagine being told to go out and fight for your country and then not getting the right supplies to fight for your country and defend not only your country but yourself, right? Not very happy. So again, this discontent is growing in Russia. People are not happy at all. Got to go quickly through the next few things. All right, so I'm going to go quickly through this one. So while Tsar Nicholas, the king, is off fighting in the war, his wife is in control of the government. Her name is Alexandra. And she was heavily influenced by this guy named Rasputin. I'm going to show you a picture of him in just a minute. Rasputin is known as the Holy Man. He was very aligned with the Russian Orthodox Church. And the two of them are essentially running Russia into the ground through what are called scandals. What is a scandal? What's a scandal? Not the TV show. Who can tell me what a scandal is? William, what's a scandal? Not sure. Anybody know what a scandal is? It's kind of like rumors, but the rumors are true. A scandal is when you use your power for something that's not right. Okay? A lot of times when the government happens, people steal money. Right? They collect money, they collect tax money, and then they take it and they keep it for themselves rather than using it for what it should be used for. That's exactly what Alexandra and Rasputin were doing. Is they were taking tax money in and then they were filling their own pockets with it, buying stuff for themselves. There's Rasputin. Man, that's a good looking dude, right? It's a nice beard. Wish I'd grow one like that. Yeah. Alright. Let's move on. Alright. So eventually, the government, the Tsar, and his family are going to go down. Like I said, Alexandra, the wife of the king, and this guy named Rasputin throw the government into chaos. Chaos is happening. Complete mismanagement of the wartime community. Who do you need?
Happy day to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Of course. The economy is in shambles. Okay? They're spending money on the wrong things. Alexandra likes to throw parties and buy herself necklaces and nice dresses. Rasputin likes to drink a whole lot. Okay? So they're throwing parties all the time with everybody else's money. Is that fair? No. So Alexandra and Rasputin are convicted of treason. What does treason mean? Conspiring against your own country or lying against your own country, right? So they're both accused of that. However, Alexandra's the wife of the king. They're not going to do anything to her, but Rasputin is is assassinated in 1916. So people are starting to get what they want. How is Rasputin shown in this political cartoon here?
It's a devilish leader.
Yeah, it's a devilish leader, right? And who does he have in his arms?
King.
The king and the queen, right? So, according to this, who was ruling Russia? Not you. Rasputin, right? And that's why he is put up for assassination. All right, let's move on. Like I said, a little bit quicker than I'm going. All right. So the first part of the revolution, as we know the Russian Revolution, 1917. The origins of this part of the revolution in March happened because of food riots and strikes. Now, when you are hungry, are you a happy person? Like really, really hungry? Are you happy? No. What happens during the lunch period? Who gets angry the first day of school when you find out you have D lunch? Not a whole lot of people like that. Some do, most don't, right? Or maybe A lunch, because by the end of the day, by the end of 6th or 7th period, you are starving again, right? When you are hungry, you are never happy, right? So food strikes happen all the time. If you're not eating, if your government is not providing you with food, as they should be at this time, you are not happy. The Duma, remember that representative body where people can vote, they kick the king out and they declare themselves the provisional government. What does it mean to be provisional? Temporary, right? So they are right now the best thing that can happen, but we are going to make something a little bit better. That's what they're saying here. They form these tiny committees made of Soviets. Again, all that means is that people were voting for them to work in the government. The Tsar abdicates. What does this word mean? We said it 3 or 4 times this unit. The word I circled. Abdicate. Back out or step down, right? So the Tsar steps down. He gives up all of his power. He gives up his power. He doesn't want to get killed, essentially. Guess who comes back? That guy who's the leader of the communists. Vladimir Lenin brings back the Bolsheviks. Now, Bolsheviks just means what? What did I say to think of when you think of Bolsheviks? What? Nope. Communists. It's the communists. So Bolsheviks means communists. So what it ends up being, the revolution is fought between the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks being the communists, the Mensheviks being the Soviets and the people in the Duma. So let's see who wins. So there is Vladimir Lenin. We're going to step back a little bit. Oops. Let's talk a little bit about Lenin first. Lenin being the leader of what group? The Bolsheviks. Lenin leads the Bolsheviks. Okay? Lenin is a revolutionary leader. What does it mean to be revolutionary or radical? What does that mean? What does it mean to be radical or revolutionary? What, DJ? Can mean communist. Well, you can be revolutionary without being communist. What does that mean? Omar. What does it mean to be revolutionary or radical? Yeah. You're Omar, aren't you? What does it mean to be radical or revolutionary? You change. And not only a small change, but a big change. Vladimir Lenin, for his whole life, wants big change in Russia. And for that reason, he is sent into exile in 1897 by the government. What does it mean to be put in exile? What? You're banished, you're kicked out, you're put in prison. But you're not only put in prison in the country, you're put in prison somewhere else. Because you are so scary to the government. Okay? That was this guy right here. Lenin is scary to the Russian government. So they kick him out of the country. Because what he wants is he wants revolution. He says the poor are being mistreated in Russia so badly that we need to go to revolution. He says that all power should go to the Soviets. Now the Soviets, they're the people who are getting voted into the government. So Lenin's not as crazy as some people put him. This is what you need to know. This always shows up on the SOL. Is that he promises the Russian people peace, land, and bread. Peace meaning no more fighting. Land because the poor are not allowed to own land. And bread meaning he will give them food because people are hungry. Let's erase this. So Lenin, leader of Darnell, who is Lenin leading? The communists. We'll say the communists, right? All right. Lenin, communism. So skip. Sugar. Skip to November of the same year. The Bolsheviks get their symbol that they've always wanted. The Red Guards, the Red Army. So the connotation between communism and the color red has its origin. Workers take over government offices with force. So that means workers, people working in the factory, are taking over the government. They arrest the leaders of the provisional government. They say, this is not working. We need to take it over now. All private property. All private property. All private money is taken by the government and given to the peasants. That means that the very, very poor would come in and take your parents' houses, would take your parents' cars, and give it to the poor. Right? Not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun. The largest of the businesses were taken over by the government and controlled by the government. Right? So they are implementing communism on a large scale for the first time. Karl Marx's ideas had revolutionized European thought for about 40 years. And Russia finally puts it into practice, or at least they attempt to anyway. Okay? So by November, the communists had started taking over in Russia. Good? Alright, moving on. Again, these are just regular old workers, so they need a police force. So they get a police force to start doing the work for them. Right? All the dirty work. Revolutionaries is created, and like I told you, is called the Red Army. And the idea of communism is linked up with the color red. In March of 1918, the Bolsheviks call themselves the Communists. Okay? So again, this whole idea of Bolshevism and communism is linked. No, it's not bullshit, it's Bolshevik. That would be bullshit. Right? And remember, they were still sort of trying to fight in the war, so they have to sign a treaty with Germany. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Let's take a look at this picture. Who's in this picture? People. Now you're joking, but it is people. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be these rich, famous people. It's supposed to be regular old people. Regular workers. And that's what the communists want to think of when you think of the Communist Party. It's just regular old people getting the rights that they deserve. You got one more slide, right? Yes. All right, last one, quickly.
Time.
So the treaty was extremely humiliating because it gives Germany a lot of power, even though Germany was losing the war at the time. So it gets what is called nullified. All that means is it gets canceled. Russia's civil war goes on for about 3 years, from 1917 to 1920, with what ends up happening